If your bank account locks tomorrow and you can't pull out more than $10,000, how ready are you? This isn't a scare tactic. It's the documented pattern that repeats every 30 to 50 years across every continent, and the structural warning signs that precede it are already flashing. One metal has survived every single collapse. By the time this is over, you'll know why silver isn't optional anymore and what happens if you ignore this window. Here's what the financial system won't admit. When the reset comes, there are only two groups: the ones holding real things and the ones holding promises. The gap between them isn't education or starting wealth. It's whether they understood the machine before it seized. Today is December 30th, 2025. Global debt has crossed thresholds that former central bankers now publicly call terminal. Not activists, not bloggers, Nobel economists, and the institutions that set policy. They're saying out loud what they used to whisper. The math doesn't close. There is no scenario where this debt gets repaid. Think of a household. Income comes in, expenses go out, maybe something gets saved. Now imagine that household spending 30% more than it earns every single month. Credit cards, personal loans. The interest compounds. Eventually, they're borrowing just to cover interest on previous borrowing. That's not a strategy. It's a countdown. Everyone watching knows it ends badly. Governments operate the same way, just with more zeros. Most developed nations spend more than they collect in taxes every year. The shortfall gets covered by issuing bonds, IOUs with interest attached. But governments never repay the principal. When bonds mature, they issue new bonds to pay off the old ones. One credit card pays another. The debt grows. Debt-to-GDP ratios now exceed 100% across major economies. Some are pushing 150%, some beyond 200%. If your personal debt was double your annual income, you'd be in crisis. The math is identical for nations. Only the scale changes. So why hasn't this been fixed? Political incentives. No elected official will implement the cuts or tax hikes required to reduce debt. It guarantees they lose the next election. So the strategy has been delayed. Push it to the next administration, the next cycle, the next generation. This works until it doesn't. History shows us there's a moment when bond markets lose confidence, when lenders refuse to continue at current rates because the risk is too obvious, when the compounding debt overwhelms the system's ability to pretend. That's when currency resets happen. This is where it turns dangerous. Let's be direct. This is educational content only. Nothing here is financial advice. I'm not a licensed advisor. Consult professionals before making decisions. What I'm showing you is historical pattern and economic structure. No one can predict exact timing, but the mechanics repeat with precision. When governments face unsustainable debt, one solution used repeatedly throughout history is currency replacement. Germany 1923, Argentina multiple times, Zimbabwe, Russia, Brazil. Wealthy developed nations have executed this when mathematics left no alternative. The mechanics are consistent. Government announces a new currency with minimal warning. Citizens can exchange a limited amount of old currency for new currency, maybe 10,000, maybe 20, maybe 50. Amounts above that limit cannot be exchanged, or can only be exchanged under severe restrictions and penalties. Why the cap? Because governments don't want large holders using old currency to destabilize the new system or move wealth offshore. The new currency comes with controls, similar to wartime rationing. Didn't matter if you were wealthy during World War II. You couldn't buy certain goods without ration coupons, even if you had cash. In a reset scenario, if you hold more old currency than the exchange limit, that excess becomes nearly unusable. Black markets might trade it at 70 cents on the dollar, then 20, then 5, then 0 as everyone realizes the restrictions aren't temporary. The old currency dies. This is no longer theoretical. Here's what most people miss. Even if you don't own government bonds directly, Your pension does. Your insurance policy does. Your bank does. When I say bondholders lose value in a reset, I'm not talking about distant investors. I'm talking about your retirement account, your savings, your insurance. If the cash you hold is below the government's exchange limit, you'll be fine. If they allow $20,000 to be converted and you have $500, you won't lose anything. Your salary continues in new currency. Expenses shift to new currency. Life continues. But if you hold substantial savings, bond investments, or large cash balances, that wealth could become inaccessible or lose most of its value overnight. Not because you broke rules, because you held the wrong asset when the system flipped. This brings us to the only question that matters. What survives a currency reset? The answer is simple. Assets with intrinsic value independent of any specific currency. Physical things that exist in the real world and serve a purpose. Property, businesses, equipment, commodities, and for ordinary people, silver. If you're seeing the structure here, subscribe now. You'll need this next part. Silver isn't tradition. It's not nostalgia. For thousands of years, across every civilization, silver has been recognized as a store of value and medium of exchange. Not because of culture, because silver has properties that make it function as money. Silver is scarce. You can't print it. You can't create it from policy. It must be mined, refined, fabricated. This scarcity gives it value that exists outside government promises. Silver is durable. It doesn't rot or corrode. A coin from 1,000 years ago is still silver today. Silver is divisible. You can break it into smaller units or melt and recast it. Silver is verifiable. People can test and confirm authenticity. But silver has something that makes it more valuable now than at any point in history. Industrial demand. Silver is used in electronics because it's the best conductor of electricity. It's in solar panels because of reflective and conductive properties. It's in medical equipment because of antibacterial properties. Photography, mirrors, batteries, thousands of applications. This industrial demand puts a floor under silver's value. Even if people stop viewing it as money, industries still need it. This is different from purely monetary assets that only have value because humans agree they do. Let's talk numbers. Today, December 30th, 2025, silver trades around $75 per ounce after hitting an intraday low of $71. At $75 per ounce, silver is accessible. You don't need wealth to start. A few $100s, 1 or 2 ounces at a time. Build over weeks or months. This accessibility is silver's greatest structural advantage compared to other hard assets. Real estate requires tens or hundreds of thousands. Businesses require capital and expertise. Art and collectibles require specialized knowledge and large capital. Silver, anyone can begin. Once this starts, it doesn't stop cleanly. Here's where the $75 price becomes critical from a currency crisis lens. Silver's modest per ounce price makes it practical for real transactions. If currency becomes unstable or restricted, you won't trade large bars of metal. The denominations are too big, but a silver coin? That's a practical size for actual commerce. History confirms this repeatedly. During Weimar Germany's hyperinflation in the 1920s, people used silver coins for daily transactions when paper marks became worthless. During Argentina's multiple currency collapses, silver functioned as medium of exchange. In Zimbabwe's hyperinflation, those holding silver maintained purchasing power while paper currency holders lost everything. The pattern repeats across different countries, different decades, different crisis structures. Silver maintains value because it has worth that exists independent of any government's promise or any central bank's policy. Practical example. You have $10,000 in savings. Government announces a reset and says you can exchange up to $10,000 in old currency. You exchange your savings. You've lost nothing. But your pension fund holding 50,000 in bonds? Your emergency fund with 30,000 in cash? Those amounts above the limit might become locked or lose most of their value. Now imagine you had converted 5,000 of that emergency fund to silver over the past few years. At $75 per ounce, that's roughly 67 ounces. When the reset happens, your silver doesn't care what currency the government switches to. It's still 67 ounces of silver. It still has industrial value. It's still recognized globally as valuable. You can sell it for new currency or trade it directly for goods and services. This is the separation point between those who maintain wealth through currency transitions and those who lose it. Winners hold assets with intrinsic value independent of any currency system. Losers hold paper promises that vanish when the system resets. I'm not suggesting you panic and convert everything to silver tomorrow. That's poor planning. What I'm saying is silver deserves a position in any serious wealth preservation strategy, especially given current debt levels and historical patterns. Financial advisors talk about diversification. Don't put everything in one basket. True diversification means holding different asset types that respond differently to various scenarios. Stocks, real estate, bonds, cash, and precious metals like silver. Each protects against different risks. Silver specifically protects against currency devaluation, monetary system instability, and loss of confidence in paper assets. These risks are elevated when government debt reaches unsustainable levels, which is where we are now across developed nations, and this window is already closing. Let me be clear what silver is not. Silver is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Price fluctuates. Some years up, some down. Today alone, silver moved from 71 to 75, a range of several dollars in one session. If you buy silver, think long-term insurance, not short-term trade. Silver is also not perfectly liquid like cash in a bank account. If you need to sell quickly, you might not get optimal price. You need to find a buyer, complete transaction, receive payment. This takes time. Silver should be part of wealth preservation, not your emergency fund for immediate expenses. What silver does provide is protection against systemic risk to the monetary system itself. That insurance becomes more valuable as systemic risks increase, which they clearly have based on debt levels, central bank policies, and warnings from credible experts. If this resonates, like this video, now others need this information. Practical steps. If you're interested in holding silver as part of wealth preservation, what do you do? First, decide on an amount that fits your situation. Financial advisors sometimes suggest precious metals comprise 5 to 10% of a diversified portfolio, though this varies by individual circumstance and risk tolerance. Second, decide on form. Physical silver comes in various shapes: coins, bars, rounds. Each has advantages. Government-issued coins carry a slight premium, but are easily recognizable and tradable. Bars can be more cost-effective for larger amounts, but may be less liquid. Rounds are privately minted and fall between. Third, consider storage and security. Physical silver is heavy and valuable. You need a secure location. Home safes, bank safety deposit boxes, specialized precious metals storage facilities. Each option has trade-offs in cost, accessibility, security. Fourth, buy from reputable dealers. The silver market has scams and overpriced products. Research. Check reviews. Understand reasonable premiums over spot price. Be suspicious of deals that seem too good. Fifth, take delivery if possible. Paper silver, meaning certificates or claims on silver held by someone else, doesn't provide the same protection as physical silver you actually possess. During currency crisis, paper claims might not be honored. Physical silver in your possession is yours regardless of what happens to any financial institution. Here's a question you're thinking. If silver is such good protection, why doesn't everyone buy it? Several reasons. First, most people don't understand monetary history or how currency resets work. It's not taught. It's not discussed in mainstream media. People assume the current system continues forever because it's all they've known. Second, silver doesn't pay interest or dividends. It sits there. In a world where people expect assets to produce ongoing income, silver can seem unproductive. But that misses the point. Silver's purpose isn't income generation. It's wealth preservation through disruptions that destroy other assets. Third, recency bias. Currency resets haven't happened in most developed nations in recent decades. People assume because it hasn't happened in their lifetime, it won't happen. But zoom out. Currency resets are common throughout longer history. Fourth, the financial industry doesn't promote silver. Banks, brokers, advisors make money from commissions, fees, managing complex products. There's no ongoing fee structure in buying and holding physical silver. No economic incentive for the industry to recommend it. But none of these reasons change the underlying math. Debt levels are unsustainable. History shows what happens when debt becomes unsustainable. History shows what assets protect people when currency systems reset. Silver consistently appears on that list. One more historical perspective that locks this in. In 1920, you could buy a high-quality men's suit for about $20, which was roughly 1 ounce of gold or 20 silver dollars. Today, a quality suit still costs roughly the same in precious metals. The dollar amount required has changed dramatically, but the amount of precious metal required has remained stable. This is a coincidence. It illustrates fundamental principle. Paper currencies fluctuate, often losing purchasing power over time. Physical commodities with intrinsic value maintain purchasing power over long periods. Silver isn't making you richer when its dollar price rises. The dollar is becoming less valuable. Silver is maintaining its worth while currency depreciates. This is why silver matters for reset protection. When old currency becomes worthless and new currency is introduced, silver doesn't lose value. It gets repriced in new currency. Your purchasing power is preserved because silver's intrinsic worth doesn't depend on any particular currency system. Now, timing. When will a reset happen? Nobody knows. Could be next year. Could be 5 years. Could be longer. Anyone claiming exact timing is guessing or selling something. What we know is conditions that lead to resets are becoming more pronounced. Debt higher than peacetime history. Central bank balance sheets at unprecedented levels. Political polarization makes fiscal reform nearly impossible. These conditions increase probability of crisis. They don't tell us exactly when. This is why preparation matters more than prediction. You can't time it perfectly, but you can position yourself to be protected whenever it happens. Think insurance. You don't buy fire insurance because you know exactly when your house will burn. You buy it so if fire happens, you're protected. Silver is insurance against currency system failure. Even if a reset never happens in your lifetime, silver still serves valuable purposes. Hedge against inflation. Portfolio diversifier that moves differently than stocks and bonds. Tangible asset you fully control. Owning silver isn't a bet that only pays off in crisis. It's prudent wealth preservation that provides value even in normal times. One common concern. Some worry that if a reset happens, government might confiscate precious metals. This happened in the United States in 1933 when the FDR ordered citizens to turn in gold. It's a legitimate historical example. However, several things differ today. First, that order applied specifically to gold, not silver. Silver has different legal status and was not subject to confiscation. Second, enforcement was spotty even for gold. Many kept their gold. Nothing happened. Third, modern governments have more sophisticated tools for managing crises than in the 1930s. Confiscation is possible, but perhaps less likely than other measures. More importantly, even if confiscation were attempted, government would likely offer payment in new currency for metals they take. You'd still be better off than holding old currency that becomes worthless. And some precious metals can be held in ways that are private and not easily tracked. I'm not advocating breaking laws, but physical metals in your possession are inherently more private than financial assets in the banking system. Broader point. No preparation is perfect. No strategy guarantees protection against every scenario, but holding silver as part of wealth preservation significantly improves your position compared to holding only paper assets that depend on current monetary system stability. 3 action items before we close. First, educate yourself further. This video is introduction. Read books on monetary history. Study past currency crises. Understand how money actually works. Knowledge is first defense. Second, assess your current allocation. What percentage of wealth is in assets that depend on current currency system remaining stable? Cash, bonds, pensions. What percentage is in real assets with intrinsic value? Property, businesses, commodities, precious metals. If balance is heavily toward paper assets, consider whether that matches your risk tolerance given current conditions. Third, if silver makes sense for your situation, start small and be consistent. You don't need hundreds of ounces at once. Buy 1 or 2 each month. Over time, it adds up. Dollar cost averaging means you buy at different price points and avoid putting all money in at a high price. At $75 per ounce, silver is accessible to most people. That's one of its great advantages. You don't need wealth to start. You need to understand why it matters and take action. Throughout history, there have been moments when rules changed suddenly. People who thrived through those transitions weren't necessarily smartest or wealthiest. They were the ones who understood what was coming and positioned accordingly. They held assets that maintained value through disruption. We may be approaching one of those moments. Government debt is at levels that cannot be sustained. Everyone knows it. The question isn't whether something happens, but when and what form it takes. By understanding the role silver has played throughout history during currency disruptions, and by holding physical silver as part of wealth preservation, you position yourself to maintain purchasing power regardless of how the current system resolves its debt problem. Today, silver sits at $75 per ounce. Yesterday, it touched 71. These short-term fluctuations matter less than long-term principle. Silver is a tangible asset with industrial utility and thousands of years of history as money. When paper currency systems face crisis, silver preserves wealth. It's done so in Germany, Argentina, Zimbabwe, and countless other places throughout history. The choice is yours. You can hope the current system somehow resolves its debt problem without disruption, despite all historical evidence suggesting that's unlikely. Or you can take prudent steps now, steps that serve you whether crisis comes next year or decade from now. If you found value in this, share it with someone who needs this information. Financial knowledge is one of the most valuable things you can share. The best time to prepare for crisis is before it happens. The second best time is now.